Hello viewers, in this tutorial we are going to learn how to monitor and send alert on detecting log gap between the primary and the standby database in a data guard system using OEM. Here is a recap before we proceed. So I have my two Linux servers named Linux 1, which is my primary server, and Linux 2, which is our standby server. And the primary server has the primary database with the name testdz, for which I have already set up the environment, and we will simply call the data guard manager command prompt. From here I logged in as sys, and I'll use the command show configuration, and we see that the testdz1 is currently the primary database and testdz2 is the physical standby database, and our data guard broker configuration is working fine. Now let's go back to our OEM console. I will log in to my OEM system using sysman user, and then I will list out all our target databases. And as you can see, this testdz1, that is the primary database, and testdz2, that is the standby database, both are listed as target databases in my OEM system. Right now, I am at the data guard administrative page for the primary database, which can be accessed using data guard administration option under the availability menu for the target database. Please note that setting up notifications, alerts, and monitoring in OEM is a separate topic. I have a 16-part full YouTube series on OEM and also individual tutorials on setting up OEM monitoring and notification. You can watch them using the links provided in the description of this video below. I assume that you already have your OEM monitoring framework in place with target groups, incident rules, etc. Most of the time, the default metrics collected for the database instances work great for the monitoring of your data guard system. But sometimes you need a little extra. For example, here I am demonstrating how you can set up an alert for log gap detection using a metric extension. Say you want to send a warning alert when the log apply gap between the primary and the standby reaches 5 and a critical alert when it is 10. Let's learn how we can do that. First, we need a SQL query which will detect that log gap when it is run against the primary database. So I connected to my primary database using SQL Developer, and this is the query that we are going to use. I have developed this SQL query and it is also available in my Google Drive. If you want, you can copy it from there using the link provided in the description of this video below. And we will first simply run it against the primary database to see what it returns. So the result says the primary database, the primary host, log archived, destination ID, log applied in the destination ID, applied time, and the log gap, which is currently 0. It means right now there is no log gap. So we will artificially create some log gap by stopping the MRP process and doing some log switches in the primary so that the gap increases, and that gap can be detected by this query. So we will go to our primary database and connect to the primary database as sysdba, and do a archive log list to see what is the current log sequence, that is 2, which is in progress. Before we do a few log switches in the primary, we will go back to our standby database, and I connect it as sys, and then we will stop the MRP process. Just to make sure that there is no MRP process running. Yes, there is no MRP. Now the log apply service is stopped. Now let's go back to the primary database and we will do a few log switches. Alter system switch log file 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we did 5 log switches in the primary. So the log sequence should have increased to 7 now. I'll go back to our SQL Developer window and we will run this SQL query again, and we see that the log gap is currently 5 because we did 5 log switches. So with a little modification into this query, we should be able to use it in our metric extension. So let's make a copy of this query, paste it below, and we don't need all this information like primary database, primary host. All we need is this log gap, which will be used by the metric extension to determine whether it's a warning or critical situation. So in this query, we will remove all these fields except the log gap field. So select log archived minus log applied, which is actually the log gap, and rest of the things I'm keeping the same. And also we don't need this order by clause. Let's execute it for the one last time and see. And it gives us just the piece of information that is needed for our metric extension. Then I will go back to our OEM console. So we arrived at the administrative page of the DataGuard system. And as expected, we can see there is an error because we just stopped the MRP process. Now, to create the metric extension to monitor the log gap, first we'll go to this enterprise menu. Under that, go to monitoring, and under that, go to metric extensions. And in the metric extensions page, we will click on this create button first and select the metric extensions. In the metric extension creation process, we will go to the general properties, and the target type here will be database instance, because this metric extension will be applicable on only database instances. And let's put a name like detect log gap. You can put any name here which is meaningful to you. I'm using this name here, and we'll use the same name as display name also, detect log gap. And the adapter that is giving us a couple of options: OS command, multiple columns, SQL, and it is going to be SQL because we are going to use a SQL statement to detect the log gap. And the description will be, say, ME to detect standby log gap. Data collection, you should keep it enabled for future use. Data upload, yes. Use of metric data, alerting and historical trending, let's keep it on, because if you want to see any trend in log gaps, you should be able to see the history. That's why we should keep this option on. Upload interval, one collection. Collection frequency by minutes, and the repeat every 15 minutes option is there. It means this metric extension will check the log gap every 15 minutes. Just for information, you don't have to select anything in this advanced section. Then click on the next button. Now here we have to put the SQL query that we tested in our SQL developer. So let's copy it from there, paste it, and you can also use a SQL query file instead if you don't want to use the SQL query. But that file has to be present in all of the servers where you want to deploy this metric extension. And under the advanced properties, we don't have to put anything. Connection properties, let it take the default ones. Upload custom files, you don't have to do anything here. And we will click on the next button. Now the columns. Columns are nothing but the field which is going to accept the value returned by the query. If you remember, our query returns only one numerical value, which is nothing but the log gap. So we'll add one column to receive that value in the OEM side. So click on the add new metric column, and here we will simply put a meaningful name like, say, log underscore gap, and display name of this variable will be also log gap. It is a numerical value. There is no unit required. And the category, you should select something meaningful that actually represents the scenario for the log gap. So we will take it as a availability. And the transient option should be false, as it also mentioned why it should be false. Then alert thresholds. As we discussed before, we want the warning situation to be greater than or equals to 5, and the critical situation should be greater than or equals to 10. Manually clearable alerts will be false because we don't want to clear it manually. As soon as the underlying situation is resolved, for example, if there is a log gap because of a network issue, and that network issue is resolved, and as a result the log has been transferred, or the MRP process is able to catch up all the pending logs, then this metric extension will evaluate the situation and it will automatically clear the incident. So that's the reason we don't have to set this manually clearable alert. It will be false. And number of occurrences before alert, it is going to be 1. Now this alert message, what alert message will be most meaningful for you? So this percentage column name is nothing but the display name that we have set here, that is log gap, and the value will be the one that will be returned by the SQL query. So whenever one alert will come from this metric extension, your message in that alert will look like the value of log gap is a number like 5, 10, something like that. So we are okay with that, so we'll keep it that way. And under compute expression, we don't have to set anything. We will simply click OK. So we have defined the numerical column to receive the value returned by the SQL query successfully. Now we can click Next. And in the credentials section, we will use the Use Default Monitoring Credentials. And then we'll click on Next button. And here we need to test our metric extension, because before we deploy it, we need to make sure that it is working as expected. And it will be tested against certain targets that we can select here. So under the test targets, we will click on this Add button, and it will give us all the database targets which are available in this OEM system. And we will use our primary database target, that is the test DG1. Select it, then select the line again and click on this Run Test button. It should return a value 5. And below, under test results, we can see that the log gap, this is the message we are able to see, which is 5. So it means the metric extension is working as expected, and there is no error message because this metric extension did not encounter any error. You can leave it like this, the test targets. It doesn't make any difference. So click on the Next button, and it is giving a summary page, and we will click on the Finish button. And in the list of metric extension, now our new metric extension is available, where we see this one, Detect Log Gap. Let's increase the height of this window. Let's close the confirmation message and select the line with the metric extension that we just created. Now this metric extension is actually created, but it is not yet deployed to any of our database targets. To make use of this particular metric extension, we must deploy it on certain targets on which we want to run this. To do that, we'll select that metric extension, go to Actions menu, and the first step to do that is to Save as Deployable Draft. Let's click it. And the metric extension has been successfully saved as a deployable draft, and the version is 1. The version is given here so that we can do modifications in this metric extension if required in the future, and create subsequent versions like version 2, version 3, etc. Let's close the confirmation message. Let's select the line again, go to Actions menu, scroll down, and then we will publish this metric extension. So publish is nothing but this metric extension becomes global so that other administrators or users in this OEM system, whoever has access to this metric extension, will be able to use it on their respective targets if required. So we will publish it, and we got the confirmation that it has been successfully published. Let's close it. And now we are ready to deploy this metric extension. And if you go towards the right, you see that deployed targets is currently 0. So it is not deployed on any database targets. So we will select this line, click on the Actions menu again, scroll down, and select this Deploy to Targets option. Now in the next screen, we have the option to select the database targets on which we want to deploy this. So we will deploy this on our primary database because this is going to run against the primary database, not against the standby database. Please remember that when this primary database will change the role to a standby database and the old standby database becomes the new primary, in that case, these monitoring settings will automatically take place. If you have multiple databases in your OEM system as target databases where you want to deploy this metric extension, then you can select all those database targets here using Control-click. Because we have only one database, that is the testdz1, which is our primary database, and it has the data guard configuration with one standby. So we are going to select only this one and then click on the select button. And the selected database is displayed in this list. And now all we need to do is to click on this submit button. And it says that the deploy operation has been submitted. And currently the status is scheduled. If we refresh this page, if it is completed, then this line should go away. Yes, no data found means the deploy operation has been completed. Now let's go back to our metric extensions page again, where if we see the metric extension detect log gap, there we see that the deployed target is now 1. Earlier it was 0. Now it means that our metric extension is now fully operational on this database target. Now, as we deployed it in our database target named testdz1, where already there is a log gap of 5, we should be able to see one warning alert on that database target. So let's go back to all our targets. Let's right click on our target database testdz1, go to Oracle database menu, and under that monitoring, and under that incident manager. And at the top of the incident manager's page, we see that there is an incident. If we increase the width, we are able to see the full message here. The value of the log gap is 5, exactly what we expected from the metric extension. Now select that line and we will see what additional actions it has taken. Let's increase the height of the bottom window and click on the events tab, and under the events we'll click on this message, the value of log gap is 5, and it will take us to the next page where we'll be able to see the series of actions it has performed as per the incident rules. And if we go to notifications, we should be able to see all the actions it has performed. So in the first place, it says that the following notification will be sent to 1 email and 1 recipient, which is already done at 5:23:26 seconds. And the next action it performed was sending an email. This is my personal email ID. And under the rule, which was created by sysman with the rule name myRuleSet and rule myRule1. Again, if you want to know more about how to set up your notifications, alerts, etc. in OEM for your database environment, please watch my dedicated video on that, which is there in the Mastering OEM series. But for your convenience, I have also mentioned the link to that particular video. Now, just for the completion, I will go back to my personal emails inbox to see what message I just received. At the top of this inbox in my personal email, I can see that there is a warning alert from the database test DG1, and the value of log gap is 5. And if I click on that, we can see the details in the email body. Now I just restarted my MRP process and also check the status of the data guard related process where MRP has applied all the logs. So the gap from 2 to 7, which was 5, has been removed and it is now current with the primary. So we should be receiving one clear alert for the warning alert that we received before. Let's go back to my inbox again, and on the top of the inbox I can see that there are two messages. Both are clear. One is for the metric extension and it says the alert for the log gap is cleared, and the other one is also related, that is the data guard status of test DG2 manage.home is now normal. So let's click on the first one where we see all the details about the clear message. And similarly, if we go to the second one, there also we see that the metric value is now normal or a 00. It is successful completion. So it means our testing has been successfully done. And this is how we'll be able to set up an alert and monitoring on our data guard system on detecting log gap and alerting. I also have a series named Step by Step Oracle Data Guard. If you want to dive deeper into the Oracle Data Guard and become a master, please watch that series. So viewers, please provide your feedback in the comment section of the video and hit the like button if you found it useful. That will mean a lot to me and help grow this channel.